how money and banking work and why they're broken today. There are over 160 currencies in the world today, and the money supply from most of them increases rapidly, which persistently and invisibly dilutes people's savings and wages, and siphons that value away towards others. Money can be printed or lent into existence for corporate interests, bankers, or corrupt officials, and this purchasing power is taken away from the public in ways that are purposely more subtle and harder to detect than taxation. And as people try to reach outside of their regions for better money elsewhere, capital controls and other points of friction are often used to keep them in. Even in wealthy countries, all is not well. While inflation may not be as high, the money concentrates toward a smaller and smaller number of hands over time, and more debt is piled up on the government ledger. Political polarization grows, as nobody can agree on who is causing it or why it's happening. Improving technology should make things cheaper over time, but central banks' inflation mandates are to ensure that prices continually increase instead, by continually expanding the amount of money in the system. Money affects us all. It's how we make contracts, how we coordinate economic activity, and how we store our purchasing power for the future. And while the world has improved in many ways, money itself continues to be broken for most people worldwide. I'm Alden, and this is a problem I have invested countless hours into understanding. I grew up in poverty, which from a young age gave me a strong interest.
Hey everyone, I'm glad you're here. A little Labor Day weekend in the US when recording this. And if you don't know about Lynn Alden, you need to know about Lynn Alden. She always talks on different Bitcoin podcasts and streams and interviews and things of that nature. And she really understands this, and she's extremely smart. So make sure you like, subscribe to this to her channel and to this video, as I'm going to share the original, of course, always. I'm going to take excerpts. This is going to be for my school community and for all of us Bitcoiners to understand why the money is broken, why the economy, the Fed, all this stuff. And I'm going to curate the best that I can find into one huge classroom to help educate people who are lost. What do I find? What do I listen to? This is going to be what you need to listen to. These are the people who are the experts that I'm going to make sure I bring to you. And for now, join that school community for free, because it will be changing to a paid class community. Not to mention, with the paid community, there's going to be free Bitcoin airdrops from those who do pay. So there's going to be ways to win Bitcoin. I want to help everybody spread the wealth, spread sats, and a lot of other great things are going to come from that. So stay tuned for all that, because I promise you it's going to be great, exciting, and fun. And you're all going to love it. So let's continue.
In saving and investing. In my adult life, my husband and I split our time each year between the United States and Egypt, since our shared roots, families, and friends are in both places. So, I see firsthand the troubles that broken money can cause, both subtly in a developed country and more overtly in a developing one. I currently analyze and invest in the global financial system as a profession, but before that, I was an engineer building, taking apart, and understanding complex systems. I view money as another system I must take apart to understand. This video aims to distill the knowledge I've gathered on this topic. For a deeper dive, refer to my book, Broken Money: Why Our Financial System is Failing Us and How We Can Make It Better. In the third stage, a paper instrument such as a banknote is an asset that is owned by whoever possesses it, enabling it to be freely exchanged between parties, with no need for ownership transfer beyond physical possession. This third form relies on the existence of large and widely recognized institutions. Otherwise, merchants would not accept these banknotes. The foundational issue with banking lies in the necessity for customers to trust banks to effectively manage their reserves. In the gold-based banking systems of past centuries, customers expected that their deposits and banknotes could be redeemed on demand. However, bankers frequently betrayed that trust, as they recognized that most individuals did not redeem all their gold at once, which allowed bankers to lend out some of their gold while maintaining only a fraction for customer redemptions. One way around this problem is with full reserve banking. In this approach, all demand deposits, which can be redeemed by depositors at any time, must be fully backed by liquid reserves, and any loans that a bank makes must instead be funded by time deposits with an equal or longer duration. So, if a bank offers a 2-year loan, it should be supported by certificates of deposit with at least 2 years of duration. This practice of matching durations leads to a more stable system because it avoids making commitments about liquidity that cannot always be fulfilled. Much of history has decided against full reserve banking in favor of fractional reserve banking, where demand deposits can be redeemed at any time, even though only a fraction of them are kept in reserves for immediate redemption. This approach hinges on the assumption that not many people will redeem or withdraw their money at the same time. However, during crises, they often do. When money is borrowed from a bank, it leads to the creation of additional fractionally reserved deposits. These deposits can then be placed in another bank, where they are once again subject to fractional reserve practices and can be lent out immediately, repeating the process. This cycle results in the double counting, triple counting, quadruple counting, and so on for base money, causing the system to be burdened with many times more gold claims than there is actual gold. While this system functions well most of the time, it occasionally experiences catastrophic failures. Central banks were established to mitigate the impact of fractional reserve banking crises and to provide financial support to governments during times of conflict. In the absence of a central bank, a system is typically referred to as free banking. Under a free banking arrangement, banks safeguard their own gold, issue deposits, and distribute banknotes redeemable for gold, although they still normally have to follow regulations placed on them by the government. In contrast, when a central bank is established and granted monopoly status by the government, all banks are required to deposit their reserves with the central bank, which holds the gold on their behalf. This setup involves fractional reserve practices even within the central bank that manages the reserves. When a fractional reserve bank faces a run on its reserves, it can borrow from other banks using its loan assets as collateral. But during financial crises, mutual distrust among banks can lead to system failures due to excessive claims on money compared to available reserves. To counter this, central banks often resort to printing more currency, causing currency devaluation, breaking gold pegs, and inflation. Eventually, many central banks and governments abandon gold-backed currency altogether to create a new type of global financial system. Since 1871, this system has undergone 3 structural transformations. After the first transformation, the modern financial era began with the International Gold Standard, which spanned from 1871 until the early 20th century. The global financial system was gravitating towards centralization, particularly around London, where bankers could efficiently transact through a centralized clearinghouse. Jevons also recognized the substantial risks accompanying this growing efficiency. He emphasized that there are approximately 20 times more claims for gold than actual gold reserves. He cautioned that bankers should never forget that these fractionally reserved claims essentially represented promises for gold, even though they were rarely redeemed as such. Even if just 5% of people simultaneously demanded their gold, the system would crumble. However, in a scenario where individuals predominantly hold deposits and paper claims backed by gold stored in central bank vaults, the ability to sever gold redemption becomes a matter of a stroke of a pen, allowing for the rapid printing of vast amounts of money. Governments were no longer restricted by the quantity of gold in their reserves. They could continue fighting until they depleted the liquid savings of their entire citizenry. The second period of the modern financial era unfolded after World War II and extended until 1971. During the war years, gold pegs collapsed worldwide, with some nations even outlawing gold ownership for their citizens. Following the war, most countries, except the United States, faced severe devastation. So, the United States, representing over 40% of the global economy, assumed a central role in a new international financial system. In 1944, as the Allied forces neared victory, representatives from 44 countries convened in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, to design the future global financial system. Britain advocated for a system centered around a neutral reserve asset called a banker, while the United States pushed for pegging all currencies to the dollar, with the dollar itself tied to gold. The US proposal prevailed, leading to the establishment of what we now recognize as the Bretton Woods system. Under this system, it remained illegal for Americans to own gold, and they couldn't redeem dollars for gold, but foreign central banks had that privilege. The creation of the World Bank and International Monetary Fund followed the Bretton Woods Conference, serving as key components for enticing, enforcing, and regulating the system. Once again, the Achilles heel was fractional reserve banking. Between 1950 and 1970, the number of dollars in circulation tripled due to bank lending and government deficits, even as U.S. gold reserves diminished through foreign redemptions. Offshore dollars further multiplied, essentially forming one fractional reserve system on top of another. By the late 1960s, it became evident that the system was destined to fail, prompting President Nixon to terminate gold redeemability in 1971. The third and current era of the modern financial system commenced in the 1970s, following the collapse of the Bretton Woods system. After 1971, the world found itself in an entirely unbacked monetary system, marking a significant departure from previous eras. While governments could compel their citizens to use currency for domestic transactions, the challenge lay in trusting other governments' unbacked ledgers for global trade. During this period, the United States still held the world's largest economy, military power, and global dollar network effects from the Bretton Woods era. In 1974, the Nixon administration struck a deal with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, requiring that Saudi Arabia would exclusively sell its oil in dollars, accumulate dollar surpluses, and invest those surpluses in U.S. government bonds as reserves. In return, the U.S. would offer lucrative arms deals and military protection. This practice extended to other OPEC countries, giving rise to the petrodollar system. And for a substantial period, almost all global energy trade was denominated in dollars. Throughout these three eras, the gold standard, where nations supported their currencies with gold reserves, the Bretton Woods system, characterized by the United States' substantial gold holdings and other countries pegging their currencies to the dollar, and the petrodollar system, where the US dollar and US government bonds serve as the pillars of global trade, one can see a gradual shift toward two defining features: centralization and abstraction. The failure rate for currencies around the world is very high. In the 1990s, Brazil, at the time the fifth most populous country in the world, experienced severe hyperinflation. Since the 1980s or later, hyperinflation has impacted other nations such as Argentina, Yugoslavia, Zimbabwe, Venezuela, Poland, Kazakhstan, Peru, Bulgaria, Ukraine, Lebanon, and several others. Additionally, countries like Israel, Mexico, Vietnam, Ecuador, Costa Rica, and Turkey grappled with triple-digit inflation during this period, which is on the brink of hyperinflation. Many other countries experienced recurring periods of double-digit inflation. Nigeria, with a population of over 200 million people, has witnessed an annualized price inflation rate of 13% over the past decade. Turkey and Argentina, both esteemed members of the G20 nations, with a combined population exceeding 130 million people, have struggled with runaway inflation for years. In 2016, Egypt, home to over 100 million people, drastically devalued its currency by half relative to the dollar, and repeated this devaluation again in 2022. Both actions taken at the bidding of the International Monetary Fund. When such devaluations occur, not only do people see their savings lose value, but their ongoing wages denominated in local currency units also suffer. Between 2020 and 2022, the United States increased its public debt by over $8 trillion, a significant portion of which was effectively printed by the country's central bank. This equates to more than $60,000 per American household. However, the average American family has not received anywhere near this amount of stimulus. With more than 160 currency jurisdictions worldwide, these governments, including the United States, possess substantial authority to erode the value of people's savings and wages, often channeling this value opaquely to various parties situated closer to the source of money creation. As money is continually diluted with ever-growing supply, sometimes value is funneled to corrupt government officials. Other times, it is funneled toward financiers with privileged access to credit and bailouts. The details vary by country, and although there is plenty of blame to go around, the important point is that the incentives themselves are corrupt. The heart of the problem does not lie with specific individuals taking advantage of the system, or even those maintaining the system. The problem is that the system itself is simply broken and outdated. Perhaps what is needed is an entirely new system, one that cannot be changed at the flip of a switch, one that is decentralized, one that is permissionless, one that is open source. Since the development of the
And as you can see how important and why Bitcoin is so important, regardless of number go up, regardless of people going, oh my goodness, look, it went up. You're looking at it going up in fiat dollars, which aren't going to matter in the future. They matter today for buying stuff, but they won't matter in the future. This is important to have something that's sound. It can't be printed, it can't be added to, limited supply, scarce, things of that nature, all the things you need in real money, and why you need to hold this, because without holding this, you can see the destruction that is to come from all fiat currencies.
Cryptographers have sought methods for creating decentralized digital currency. In 1982, David Chaum published a research paper on how mutually distrustful groups could use cryptography to maintain a shared database or ledger. During the 1990s and early 2000s, figures like Adam Back, Nick Szabo, and Hal Finney explored ways to create digital tokens supported by electricity and processing power, a concept known as proof of work. In 2008, an anonymous programmer using the name Satoshi Nakamoto published the Bitcoin white paper, which expanded on these earlier ideas. It outlined a method for creating a decentralized digital currency using a distributed network of nodes and transaction timestamping through cryptography and proof of work. In 2009, Nakamoto released the open source application to implement his design, and thus the Bitcoin time chain was born. What makes Bitcoin remarkable is its ability to enable bearer asset final settlements at the speed of light. It effectively closes the speed gap between transactions and settlements that has persisted since the late 19th century. In other words, it's the first workable way to quickly send money long distances without relying on centralized intermediaries and credit. And it comes with its own finite unit of account that cannot be diluted. For the past 15 years, Bitcoin has been refined in various ways, tested to see how robust it is to attacks, and copied by competitors to see if there's any way to do it better. So far, it has continuously remained the largest, most liquid, most decentralized, and most secure cryptocurrency. Although it has been volatile, Bitcoin has reached higher highs and higher lows of market value and adoption, cycle after cycle. Bitcoin works because anyone can run an open source node on a simple device such as a laptop, and these nodes all store the full history of the ledger. Users possess private keys, enabling them to sign transactions and pay fees to move coins or fractional coins between addresses. Miners contribute electricity and processing power to add new transaction blocks to the ledger in exchange for receiving transaction fees and new coins that are generated in each new block during the early years of the network. No individual entity, including the network's creator, can change the rules, dilute people's coins, or censor transactions. The network can, however, be updated over time in a backwards compatible way by a revolving set of contributing open source developers whenever there is enough consensus by the node operators and the miners to do so. While additional layers can enhance Bitcoin's speed, transaction throughput, or programmability, the base layer remains simple and robust, with an eventual fixed supply of 21 million Bitcoins generated by miners over time in a pre-programmed deflationary pattern since inception. Value can be sent to anyone with an internet connection or brought with anyone globally. Bitcoin is decentralized digital money, offering a viable alternative to inflationary, centralized banking ledgers. This technology is helping to pierce the 160 different fiat currency bubbles that people are trapped in. Cash and gold can be blocked in airports, and bank transfers are tightly controlled, but people can send Bitcoins directly to others across borders, or bring their Bitcoins with them as they move around the world, just by writing down or memorizing 12 words representing their private key. People can protect themselves against monetary dilution and financial censorship. In a world where half of the population lives under varying shades of authoritarianism and billions of people live with persistently high inflation, the ability to fracture these 160 currency silos and connect them together should not be underestimated. However, this technology has also catalyzed the development of more centralized digital currencies. Private stablecoins, for instance, enable collateralized dollar tokens to trade on multiple blockchains, providing people in numerous highly inflationary countries easier access to US dollars for savings. Additionally, governments have explored and sometimes launched central bank digital currencies, which are digitally native, even more centralized versions of fiat currencies. This era marks a fork in the road, offering two distinct paths going forward. Over the past century and a half, within the telecommunication age, the global financial system has gravitated toward increased centralization, abstraction, and inflation, driven by the gap in speed between transactions and settlements, and relying on ever-expanding credit to bridge this gap. Most technologies in the past that made money more efficient have come at the cost of making it more centralized and controlled. On one path going forward, central bank digital currencies can continue the prior trend of ever more centralized systems that enable precise control and authority and dilution by nation-states over their citizens. On the other path, the emergence of Bitcoin and other open-source cryptographic technologies facilitating rapid digital settlements without the need for credit in a peer-to-peer manner charts a course that diverges from this trend, leading toward a more decentralized, streamlined, and deflationary monetary system. Money is a shared ledger, prompting the central question of who governs this ledger. Early credit systems were governed by local communities. Commodity money abided by natural laws. Fiat currencies came under the jurisdiction of banks and nation-states. And open-source, decentralized money like Bitcoin is governed by its users and selected by market forces. In modern times, our money has been broken because it has been centralized, closed, and corrupted in 160 different ways. If we're going to fix it in the digital age, a powerful method would be to make it more decentralized, open, and transparent, so that it can strengthen people as individuals, while at the same time shattering the financial silos that separate us. With open source money, anyone can hold it, anyone can send it, anyone can bring it with them, anyone can build new technologies that make it better, and everyone across borders can be connected by it. If you enjoyed this video, share it with a friend. If you want to learn more about these topics, check out my book, Broken Money: Why Our Financial System is Failing Us and How We Can Make It Better.
So I hope this video by Lynn Alden helped you understand a little bit more clearly what's going on with the money. Future videos are going to start dipping more into straight Bitcoin. Then we're going to start dipping into different parts of how it works, the ledger nodes, wallets, all that kind of stuff. So again, like, subscribe to Lynn Alden. Like this video, please subscribe to this channel. And links below if you want to join as of now, the free community for Skool, which is going to have a lot of great other benefits in the future, like I said, for paid members and everybody for that matter, to participate in free Bitcoin sats being sent and airdrops and contests and all that stuff being done in the community to help everyone spread the word and everyone grow their own Bitcoin bags and self-custody and all the things that are important for us to do, for like you just saw what she just shared. So I wish you all the best. Until next time, have a great day.